Gentlemen and ladies, Carthage must be destroyed. Now, you're probably looking at this and you're thinking to yourself, my God, he's finally done it. Dr. Bonsai has lost his goddamn mind. He is playing the Marian hegemony for Battletech. Joke's on you. The Second Punic War happened before the Marian reforms. Get pooped on. So, you're probably wondering, this is kind of a hard left, right? You've got Battletech and ancient Romans. Connect the dots, right? Okay. What if I told you that Battletech is structured more like a historical game than some historical games? Bonsai, I hear you say. You've gone completely flippin' mad. Have I, though? Why do people say, oh, FedCom Civil War is where I stopped playing? Why do people say, oh, I only play Succession Wars? It's because that's their favorite era, with their favorite conflicts involving their favorite factions in history. Oh, right. So, I did a little something for myself, because the thing about historical miniatures, unlike a lot of sci-fi miniatures, they're good for multiple systems. So this specifically is Warlord Games, Hail Caesar, the Punic Wars, and their epic battle scale, which is like 15 mil. So most people would see that and they would go, oh, you can only use it with this because it's branded. And it's like, no. The Romans in this time period are still the Romans in this time period. I could be using this. I could be using Mortem of Glorium, which, to be perfectly honest with you, is probably what I'm going to be using these guys with. And they all kind of perform the same because they're just models. They're markers on the field. So I went ahead. I got the two armies. I got the Scipio Africanus, Conus's Roman legions, and we'll get to the name here in a second. And then I also got the Hannibal Barca's Carthaginians. So we'll talk about that in a second video. So that being said, this is a gigantic box, by the way. It's 13 inches by 5 inches deep by like 11 inches long. This is a gigantic box, and I already took the plastic off it because it seemed like that would just be the wise thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first that new plastic smell. Ah, so good. So, all right. So very meticulously well packed. We'll put some bubble wrap. And then, oh geez, this is a lot. You know what? Let's go back a little bit. Let's actually talk about what this represents. So this represents the later Roman general Scipio. He didn't get the Africanus appellation until after he defeated Carthage. But let's just call him that for sake of keeping things straight up and down, shall we? So this is actually what you get in the box. Obviously, you get tons of Roman soldiers. At the time of the Punic War, the Romans were organized into what are called maniples, or a manipular formation, or I'm going to take a stab at this. And you're going to hear this a lot from me. If I get this wrong, dude, I don't care. I'm doing my best. A triplex, they call it the triplex Acius, A-C-I-E-S, where it's basically a phalanx with joints. So you would have, the various different Roman units in more or less this checkerboard formation so that they could be mutually supporting, and then basically forcing enemies out of line and being more, nimble in the field and restricted terrain. So, so what this army represents is this represents probably what would be fairly typical of like a Roman consular army. The Romans in the Republican days, each year they would elect 2 consuls, and each consul would be responsible for raising 2 legions, and then I want to say 2 more supporting legions from their Latin allies. And those guys would serve for 1 term. And back then, the Roman army wasn't kind of the professional not conscript, but like the professional force that it was. It was mostly made up of land-holding men, various different ages. You had the velites, these guys that are organized as skirmishers. They're going to be the youngest. And then you're going to have the hastati, who are kind of the second, who are slightly older guys, much more well-equipped than the velites, who are kind of on the front line. And then you would have the principi, who were, again, more, who are older and better equipped because they could afford it more. And then you had finally the Roman triarii, who were guys that were were organized more like your typical Greek phalanx, where it's shields, long spears, and they would basically take a knee behind the line and then redeploy to shore up where the weak points are or to exploit breaches in the line. So you had this system that the Romans had kind of were very scientific about creating, supplied by Roman equitae, who are basically again landowning, noble men who didn't want to serve in the infantry, and they were just like, I can afford a couple of horses, so I'm gonna get a horse, and I'm gonna buy myself a shield and my armor and my spears and my javelin and whatever. So. And then on top of that, you have various different kind of client states and people. So you have some Numidians, you have the Ligurians, the Gallic, the Gallic people or the Gallic people, Scipio Africanus, the actual miniature, and kind of like this weird Siocast, rules, full color shield, dice. So. Big box. So the first thing you're going to notice here, I'm going to bring this down real quick because I had to first really zoom this out because of the size of this box. So the first thing you get are shield decals, and obviously there's not enough decals to apply to each and every single miniature. You're probably going to do what they did in the box, which is, every couple of guys on the line. Then you have the actual assembly instructions, which I think are actually pretty clever the way they did that, and I'll get into more of that. And as you can see, mostly it's just like stick the guys on the base, stick the guys together. And then they have kind of like a quick color guide on how to do stuff. They recommend Army Painter. I don't believe in Army Painter. I've never had good luck with Army Painter, but that is a me problem, not anybody else's. So that's kind of the main thing. So you got that, and then you have various different cavalry and commanders, so you can add more to your army as things go on. So. And as you can see, there's another Scipio figure, and that Scipio figure is going to be unique to basically a box of legendary commanders that you're going to have access to. So, first and foremost is you get... Holy... Great googly moogly. What have I done to myself? I'm getting these guys out of the box, and I'm almost regretting this because this is probably more miniatures than you're ever going to reasonably need. So, which actually makes this box a really good deal because I got this online through a company called Flipside Gaming for Oh, those aren't Romans. For about 120 a piece. So I got a really solid deal on these because I think MSRP is like 152. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You get eight sprues of Romans, and we're going to look at the sprues themselves. So again, we're going to bring it down. Okay, here we go. So you have, first and foremost, you have the skirmishers. So these guys kind of dressed in, and your eyes do not deceive you. They are wearing like wolf pelts. Ooh, interesting. So this guy's javelin right here is broken off, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the sprues have that guy with their javelin broken off. So, so that makes me wonder if it's sloshing around inside the box. But that's something we can figure out. So, so these guys, their spears are still intact. These are the Roman equitae, the Roman kind of heavy cavalry. Or are they? So, okay. So these guys are kind of light cavalry. These guys are heavy cav. And then you have the kind of your Roman commander, your divisional commander, who, you know, is in charge, at least in the way that the rules are structured for Hail Caesar. That's kind of how they're structured, is that's you have like one guy per group of figures, and then each group of figures has, you know, kind of an overarching thing. So so here are the Romans, or here are the rest of the Romans. So here's the really clever part. So you'll see that, hey, that's just the top and the thing, and then you actually have these guys that plug in to that via that little shelf, and then you have these guys that plug into them. So effectively, you're getting the simulation of depth. So kind of demonstrated here. So you're kind of getting this faux depth on the base. Now, obviously, the Romans would never actually have stood this close together in like an actual formation, but this allows you, the player, to identify that, okay, these guys are tightly packed heavy infantry. So you have the Astati and the Principe, and these are basically guys that are more or less armed the same, where they have a big shield, they have a Roman gladius, and then they have a pilum or a pila, which is basically a heavy throwing javelin. And then you have, kind of in contrast to that, you have the Triarii, who are guys with, you know, the big horsehair transverse, I think is that right? Transverse crest? I don't know. The forehead to nape of the neck oriented horsehair crest with tall spears. And these are the guys that are going to do a lot of your heavy lifting. So besides the disappointing Velitae with their spears broken off, so those are your Romans. So you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, what else would be in here? The Romans, right? Wouldn't just be Romans. You would think that, and you'd be incorrect, because a lot of the times the Romans would levy support, or they would beg, borrow, and, you know, get support from their Latin allies, or their other Italian peoples that lived on the Italian peninsula. So you'd have these guys, who are the kind of the Samnite and the Celto-Iberian type, the Iberian and Celto-Iberian people, where a lot of them fought kind of standard hoplites with these crazy helmets, and then you have these archers from Crete, and then you have, I believe that is a general, and then you have heavy cav or medium cavalry. You have your other skirmishers, guys that are throwing javelins, and then you have Balearic slingers, basically these guys that were famous for being able to take a stone using a sling and just basically put it between your eyes at a really far distance. So yeah, looking good. No broken spears that I'm seeing. Well, oops. So this one's a little limp. But it moves back. But probably what I'll do is I'll probably just paint over that with some, to me, extra thin glue. And that'll actually should melt it a little bit, but reset it to make it better. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4 of these sprues, and the way these guys are organized is they're less well organized than the Romans. So you'll see these guys in specific, fighting in larger, deeper formations, and these guys specifically fighting in more of a loose, organized war band. So you'll have more of these guys, but they'll be less disciplined and less able to, carry the fight when things go down. And then you get this absolutely massive pile of base sprues. So you get, this is usually for artillery, and then you have the 2 small ones for commanders, and then the rest are for your rank and file. So the good thing about these miniatures, if you're not going to play warlord games, is that these bases give you consistent frontage and a consistent depth that will mesh well with other game systems. And then there's another sneaky base set. So basically, there's your plastic sprues. Very carefully. So there's your plastic sprues. So we're going to bring it down. So as you can see, this is quite a bit. This is a lot. They did not skimp on the value. And the other thing about this too is, so you're like, okay, well, I got my allied forces, but I don't really want to use them. Well, you can use them for their own army, because currently they have this rule book, which is the Gamers Edition, if you will, version of the rule book. They have an entire sub-list dealing with Roman and Carthaginian allies. And you can just say, because that's the other thing about this, it's very loosely designed to where it's like, you just take what you want from the rules and leave the rest, which I think is a really breath of fresh air, especially for a very modern game like Hail Caesar. Ironically, a modern game set in the classical period. It's much like Battletech in that regards. It's like, hey, here's a toolbox, play with the tools. And not many game companies do that nowadays, and I think that's actually really cool. The rule book itself is actually really well designed. It's beautifully illustrated. It's got a lot of great miniature pictures. Everything's laid out fairly intuitively. The historical scenarios are great because you get to see that escalation from one miniature, one set of miniatures to another. So like the first battle, which I think is the Battle of Trebia, like you can make do with like a couple of sprues of Romans and that's it. And then you can play a couple of sprues of Romans against a couple of sprues worth of your Carthaginian guys, and you'll be fine. So really handy. It's nice, hand-sized book. I believe they call the English call it an A5 dimension rule book. So if that means something to you. And then you have the dice, which are this dice packed by Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. And then the box itself was packed by Mirella. Mirella? Thanks, Mirella. I don't blame you, Morella, for the broken spears. I think that's a design choice because they should have known better that those were going to stick out that far. Last but not least, you get your unique general miniature. So that's the other kind of the unique selling proposition for this box set. It's like, oh, if you get this box, you get a special cast version of packed by Maria again. Thank you, Maria. You get a special version of General. So this is Scipio Africanus, which again is you didn't earn that until post the fall of Carthage. It's actually done in that Siocast stuff that Warlord has been using a lot of recently. And it's actually quite, it's very detailed, a little bit of flash. Looks fantastic. 15 mil, I think. It's pretty good. Pretty good, man. Nothing warped. He's not copping a G-lean to one side or the other, so I won't have to run him under hot water. You're probably still going to want to wash this guy because you're probably going to want to make sure that you're not getting a mold release on these, because the Siocast base stuff usually has some sort of like weird, I can kind of feel it on my fingers right now. It's some sort of weird greasy whatever to where it won't actually let paint and glue and stuff adhere to it. But yeah, so you get your unique commander, and then I think that is it. Oh, look at that. I found my broken spear tips. That's funny. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an interesting foray into Ancients, and I'm going to come back with the Hannibal Barca's army. Hannibal's army is way crazy. It's just the amount of just random, I'll say random crap, but like the amount of interesting, characterful and colorful nations and peoples and whatever you want to call it in that is actually really quite cool. So I'm looking forward to giving that a look, and I will probably be doing that shortly after I do this one. So thanks very much for your time, guys. Y'all have a good one.